Welcome, everyone, to Working People, a podcast about the lives, jobs, dreams, and struggles of the working class today. Working People is a proud member of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and is brought to you in partnership with In These Times Magazine and the Real News Network. This show is produced by Jules Taylor and made possible by the support of listeners like you. My name is Mel Buer, and I'm your host for the month of March. Stay tuned this month as we share the mic with workers from all over this country and discuss pressing issues central to today's labor movement. Last week, we checked in with behavioral healthcare workers in Southern California as they entered their 20th week on strike. If you haven't checked out that episode, be sure to head on over to our channels and take a listen. This week, we're staying in Southern California, where the workers of Touchstone Climbing Gym in Los Angeles have been negotiating their first contract with their employer. Touchstone Climbing, a regional climbing gym with over a dozen locations in California, experienced a wave of unionization in its Los Angeles locations early last year. The successful campaign with Workers United created a wall-to-wall union at each of the company's 5 locations in the Los Angeles area, and members of the LA-based gym are often themselves union members, and the response from the climbing community has been overwhelmingly positive. However, workers have been navigating a frustrating negotiation in order to reach an agreement on a first contract. Chief among workers' demands is better communication, higher safety standards, and better pay. With me today to discuss their unionization, their negotiations, are Ryan Barkowskis, part-time desk staff at the Post in Pasadena, and Jess Kim, former desk staff at the Post in Pasadena and now full-time Workers United organizer. Welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay. So to kick things off, because we got a lot to talk about, I really kind of just wanted to start by giving our listeners a bit of background on this current struggle that you're engaged in. Jess, if you would like just to start this conversation, can you tell me a little bit about the climbing gyms that you used to work at, that the bargaining unit works at? You know, how many locations does Touchstone own in California, in Los Angeles? What is the sort of makeup of this particular shop?
Yeah, of course. So there's Touchstone Climbing, which is where our story originated. They are a chain just in California that's fairly large. They have 5 locations in the Los Angeles area. They have Burbank, Hollywood, Pasadena, Culver City, and downtown. And last year they opened one in Torrance as well. So 5 are in our bargaining unit because that's when we organized. And there's one more in Torrance, class 5, that has not been added. And then up north, they have another big clump of gyms, especially around the Bay Area. I think it's about 10 more gyms, Ryan, I think. And then they're opening a couple more this year up there.
How big is the bargaining unit? How many employees?
It's about 170 employees inside the unit. We did organize wall to wall, which means everyone inside of the building who is not a supervisor is included. So that's desk staff, route setters, safety staff, coaches, yoga instructors, janitorial, and maintenance employees.
Ryan, what are the sort of jobs that folks are doing at a climbing gym? For our listeners who maybe aren't in the climbing community, they may have never set foot inside of a climbing gym, don't even know what it looks like or what the sort of space is. Could you kind of clue us in on what that is?
Absolutely. There's a lot of, kind of guest relations because it is a gym that requires servicing and some customer facing. So me personally being a desk staff, I greet people, I check them in, I assist people with their memberships. I do instruction as well. And besides just the general maintenance and the upkeep of the gym, a large part of our responsibility is the interaction with the community. There's additional roles such as safety staff that largely their position is meant to just facilitate those lessons, get people first acclimated with climbing, and then be keeping everybody safe. But something that's usually encouraged and that we really appreciate about the job is walking the floor, being there with the climbers, letting them know about community events, how to be active in this great community. But really, yeah, again, that's just a couple of the small roles. There's coaches, there are youth teams that we foster. There are yoga instructors, separate fitness instructors past that. There's, and just as Jess said, there's janitorial, there's maintenance, there's everything that requires this building to continue to function.
Would you say, Jess, that, these gyms are sort of situated in and interfacing really well with the community, just as Ryan has said, but, give us an idea of what the climbing community kind of looks like, in Los Angeles or in the United States? What does it feel like to you?
Yeah, well, the climbing community is legendary, perhaps just among ourselves, for our comradeship and our support. I'll drop a little hint that when we form a local, it will be Local 69 because we believe in mutual care. So I started climbing actually on the East Coast, and when I was over there, I got in because my friend in college wanted to learn how to like escape the zombie apocalypse, and this seemed like the best route for her. And I am a adamant people pleaser, so I was like, sure, let's go. We got sucked into the climbing community there, and everyone is just so supportive, kind, no matter what you look like. If you've ever do other sports before, people don't care. Everyone can get on there and touch those colorful holds on the wall, and we love to see it. So I love being part of that community. There is, a rash of bros, as in many of the sports. And I feel like that's just like entertainment for other people who come to the gym. You see a man grunting on the wall, you just let that go. He's doing his business up there. He's getting his emotions out. In California, we're lucky because in LA, we have such a strong union community, and so many of our climbers work in industries that are prolific within the working class and organizing within the working class. So we have Hollywood, all those entertainment unions, which I'm a part of. Ryan works in Hollywood as well. We have teachers' unions. We're so active. So we have a very strong community that sees each other in and outside of the gym. And we're lucky, actually at Touchstone, we have groups called affinity groups. And these are specialized meetups for people of color, for queer folks. We have Lagartia, Screw Crush, Escalemos, Para Cliffhangers for disabled climbers. We have lots of ways for people to find their people in the gym, and that's what we love about it.
Yeah, I'm new to climbing. Just recently started in the last couple of months, and I would say that it's the same experience for me. It seems like there's a very low barrier to entry, and that everyone is welcome. And it seems like that's kind of baked into the community that you have lived and worked in for as many years as you have. One thing that I do want to ask, though, is, you formed this union in the end of 2023, right? And there was some issues that were happening at your gyms in LA that kind of pushed you to really collectively organize. Ryan, do you just kind of want to tell us what the issues were and why it was important that folks came together and filed for a union?
Yeah. There were a few errors, a few omissions, and inconsistencies. We were seeing pay being, different from location to location. You could work someone else's coverage and be expected to not be paid their same rate. There wasn't proper, a ladder of seniority. There weren't like established ways to really protect yourself and have a path to advancement. Better checking in with our bosses. Touchstone kind of had this mentality of, we're so mom and pop. We so easily can just directly work with you, and that works to an extent. But when when there can be things that come up that jeopardize our safety, that worry us, and that we feel like, hey, we'd like to have more communication with you. Every now and then we'll just get a little bit of like, no, I think we're doing okay though. And that kind of sparked, I think, a lot of that organizing, us feeling like, but this is our opinion, and wouldn't you like to hear that? And to just kind of be told like, no, I think we know best.
We're a family here. Take your pizza party and walk out the door kind of experience.
Except we didn't even get pizza, okay? That's rough.
So you tried to solve these problems and tried to open up lines of communication with management ahead of organizing, and they just weren't receptive at all.
It's a very short progression, and especially, still what they encourage is like very informal means of, we just go to our direct manager, and our direct managers are then supposed to be the go-between. But that puts a lot on that middleman, right? If they make a failure in communication, or if, it just escalates there and our remote admins just deem it not necessary, we feel like we don't have any direct say. And it can make us really feel powerless if, especially if we don't, unfortunately might not have the best relationship with our managers. We can hope for the best. But yeah, that can only do so much when they're always like, oh, let's just talk about it. Let's make it informal. that doesn't always work.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's when things are informal like that, there's a lot of bottlenecking that happens because there's a lot of people who are passing messages along in a game of telephone, like the worst game of telephone ever, because it's people's livelihoods. And B, it seems like there's no documentation for you to be able to kind of like track solutions. Does that sound,
Sure.
Accurate in this situation?
Yeah. I think we've struggled in that way for sure. There can be some paper trails of emails, but past that, they even changed our communication systems, when they changed programs on us, to Slack, which I'm sure many people are on. But just simple requests that we have of just like, hey, can we just put this in writing? Can you be more consistent? Can you include this group in the Slack? Maybe there's a certain job title that isn't even on the team communications yet, and they miss announcements. They're resistant to do even that. And we're like, why should it be so hard to even just share information?
Right. Well, Jess, how did folks come together in January? What was the process for, really coming to start collectively organizing and forming this union? One thing that I like to do, especially on this show, is that many of our listeners aren't, really familiar with how unions come together. And a lot of these episodes that I do is really, the aim is to sort of pull back the curtain a little bit on what that organizing looks like. So what did that look like for you and the bargaining unit here with Touchstone Workers United?
Yeah, of course. So when I had started working at Touchstone, I feel like people joked about forming a union, like, oh, we should do that. But, there wasn't any real action, despite all these frustrations that Ryan had described. And we had a really unfortunate incident that made the LA Times in October and November of 2023, where there was a threat made against the gym that was very specific, and there's an FBI investigation started, and the company communicated so poorly that the workers and the customers were put in danger. And obviously that doesn't go over well. And the response from the company was not apologetic. It was very much a little blamey, to be honest, and didn't make people feel comfortable in the workplace. And because of that, like Ryan said, we had a centralized system for most employees to talk to each other with management prior to this. And because so many people were documenting the status of the threat at these different locations and talking, Touchstone did shut down that method of communication, but we had already exchanged emails. So we had like a big email thread going with most of the employees, and had already signed a petition to help with that situation. So because so many of us were talking already, it was pretty simple to be like, you know what, we're going to really organize. We also are fortunate that at Touchstone, we cover each other's shifts frequently for desk staff. So we travel to other locations, we get to talk to each other. And then our like setters and coaches and instructors, they all, most of them work at multiple locations as well. So there's a good flow of communication. Plus, we all hang out. We hang out after hours. We climb, we hang out outside to climb. We have the unifier of being addicted to climbing. So once we had the comms going, just like classic union campaigns, but if the listeners aren't familiar, we live in America. And in America, you do not want to talk about the union campaign openly, unfortunately, because it is really difficult to protect someone from being fired or retaliated against at this stage in the campaign. So if you're organizing, you want to use non-work emails, you want to meet off-site, you want to talk in person, and you want to make sure that everyone who's involved knows that they don't want to just be talking about, the union at this specific workplace out at the grocery store, because you never know who's around. So unfortunately, that's the reality. So yeah, we just got people talking. We had the emails, and then we distributed what are called the NLRB. They're cards indicating your interest in a union. You want 30% of the workforce to sign to file for an election, but kind of the gold standard in most unions now is getting more than 70% of workers to sign, because you need a bigger majority to win an election. And so we were able to get that very easily and very quickly because we had that impetus from people feeling very unsafe, even with, the security guards that were hired by Touchstone for a brief period of time, who were not the best, I will say.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Yes. One thing to also note here, too, is when you're talking about a majority that's 70% or more is what people call a supermajority of cards signed. It's essentially alerting the NLRB that if you were to have an election, say, for example, you file and your employer doesn't voluntarily recognize your union, it then goes to a union election that is put on by the NLRB, you're essentially telling them with confidence that you will win that election because more than a majority, a supermajority of your eligible bargaining unit has signed cards saying, yes, I will vote yes, right? It's also really good when you file and you present this information to your management, to your boss. You can say, I don't know, man, like 80% of us are already for this. It might just be easier. It's going to happen. You might as well just say yes. Let's get this party rolling, and oftentimes, if they're receptive, they will voluntarily recognize, and then your union is can be certified, and then you can really kind of start the process of negotiations for first contract. So if any of our listeners are kind of feeling the opaqueness of that, that's the general sort of gist of how unions can be certified in this country. And Jess, you are right. Oftentimes what happens with organizing situations is you really kind of have to plan and prepare for how you're going to approach people in order to get them interested in the union. I have certainly been in situations in the service industry where I'm from in Nebraska, where we tried to organize unions at the bars that we worked at. And unfortunately, the organizing was happening in places that got overheard by management. And so those, they will begin to do things like, captive audience meetings, like leaning on certain members to say no to this process. All of this is technically illegal. Or, there's a line there, but oftentimes management is not interested in seeing workers collectively organized. They view it as a loss of power in the workplace because often, especially with, Touchstone, Ryan, I'm sure you can kind of note this as well, is it seems like they have enough of a profit, right? In order to handle anything in terms, and we'll talk about negotiations after our break here in 15 minutes or so, but it would seem that they have enough money in their pockets to be able to handle you asking for a raise. You know what I mean? So I don't know if you feel the same way, but it seems to me, especially in all of my reporting, when we have a struggle like bargaining that goes sideways or a picket line that forms or a strike, oftentimes it's a question of power. Who wants to have power in the workplace? And, Ryan, what are your thoughts on that? What has it felt like to kind of collectively come into your own power as a worker with Touchstone Workers United?
It feels empowering, dare I say. It's nothing really great comes that easy. It's just really frustrating to recognize how much work and resistance this will involve. Like you said, companies might sit you down and try to talk you out of it. We had that moment. I remember when our CEO and one of the other CFOs came in, and that's their last little ditch effort to say, hey, we think we could serve you better if you don't do this. And at that little meeting, our CEO promises to us, and this feels almost like a little bit of manipulation, how he says, I will not be a union busting CEO. If you choose to ratify, I will accept that, okay, I guess that's what the majority of my workers wanted. I thought I knew better, but if you tell me this, that's what I'll hear. So what we've seen is the opposite of that. I felt inspired to, propose to put myself on this bargaining committee only as a part-time staff as well. Most of the people that I'm really trying to fight for are my full-time, friends that are more invested in this company, that really want to make this like their homes. And I just saw the failings of the communication that, what we were getting from our higher ups. And I was like, well, maybe I could lend a part of that. I think maybe I'm a little bit wishful in my thinking, when negotiations are a little bit more red tapey and, very protected. Everything is said through one lawyer, and it's been frustrating. But really what it's shown is the need for this was like, wow, I guess, yeah, his words weren't exactly true when he said that.
No, I think you bring a good point in here, Ryan, is that oftentimes management does kind of it feels a little squicky talking to them when you're talking about organizing a union. What's that one meme? All the questions you have are answered by my t-shirt that says, I'm not going to union bus. You know what I mean? Like, it feels weird. But I will say, you did the thing. You filed for election. Did they voluntarily recognize the union? No, they did not. Okay.
Absolutely not. They didn't even answer.
So yes, it was all BS. Them sitting you down and saying, "Oh, we will. We'll hear that answer." No. And so you went through the election. What was the results of the election?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact numbers. It was fairly close. We had a number of issues. We had a lot of union busting from the employer. Like Ryan said, we had those captive audience meetings, which again are illegal. If you're in the US currently, anywhere in the US, it is illegal, but especially in California, it was already illegal to have those meetings, which is when the employer comes in and tells you, not to accept the union or try to persuade you to not unionize. We also had people like managers threatening that if you unionize, your benefits will be taken away or you won't be able to talk to your manager anymore. And we received, which is my favorite, daily mail to our house in just stacks from the company. That was like these big, bold, like, why unions are terrible headlines saying they're going to like come into our homes. And like, it was like Scooby-Doo investigation out there. It was rough. It was not factual. And then we got an apology letter actually from the CEO, Mark, that was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that there were so many mailings because people were so angry about getting this pile of mail at their house. And I think there's something there too, in that the anti-union efforts can become from the employer can be so annoying and out of touch and irritating that it actually drives more people to want to unionize. Because we've had folks who like went to a captive audience meeting undecided and they came out being like, man, those assholes, I want to be with you guys. We're like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the best organizer is often the boss, We've seen that certainly in the federal worker unions in the last month or so. Folks who never would have joined the union have, seen what's been going on at the federal level. And they're like, actually, give me a card. Let me sign because I'm tired of this. One more thing before we go to the break here, but and then we'll kind of, when we come back, we're going to talk about the negotiations themselves and how things have been going since then, because all of this has happened, in early 2024 or so. But how has the climbing community responded to your unionizing effort, Brian?
Overwhelming support. It really is, like you said, how accepting the community is. The motto kind of is the crag is for everybody, outdoors. We take care of nature. We take care of it all. We just want to continue to enjoy this. We want everything that's left behind to be shared and loved by all. And yeah, like Jess said, so many people are a member of IATSE, are working freelance in so many different disciplines and jobs. And so they hear about this. And every time I've told someone that what's happened, they say, that's amazing. I'm happy for you guys. And they're checking in. They want to know how to support. So really the community is really behind us. And, these are the relationships that we have. We talk to these people every single day. We have become really good friends, and we are around them constantly, and, we're all invested in each other. So to have them behind us really, really means a lot.
Jess, from your position as an organizer, how have you sort of seen the sort of community response to both the union effort that was successful, and now as you're getting into your, deep into your negotiations at this point, how has the community's response been in terms of support, in terms of reaching out to Workers United and wanting to share their experiences with the unionized gyms? What has that been like for you on your end?
Yeah, I agree with Brian. Completely overwhelming support. I was only recently fired from Touchstone in, I want to say October. So I've only been a full-time organizer with Workers United a few months, but we have an Instagram account for our workers. It's at Touchstone Workers United. we get a ton of DMs from people offering support, from high profile climbers to local people in our community to people across the US who want to support and they're a part of their local climbing community. We also get interest from other gyms in the US who are asking, how do we organize? Can you walk us through it? And of course, we're very happy to. It's been truly wonderful. We haven't gotten a single negative DM. What also really gets me is I discovered some Reddit threads yesterday about the organizing, and wow, people in there are so supportive and so petty. There's some memes on there that absolutely sent me. It was just, wow, I love the support. You know what? The level of petty is just, that's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, you got to laugh at it when things are so frustrating, right? So we kind of talked about how the organizing was last year. How long have you guys been in the negotiation process? When did you start bargaining for your first contract?
We started our first session in September 2024.
Okay, so it's been, what is that, 4 months? No, longer. 5 months, 6 months of bargaining.
Yep, a long time.
Not great. How have they? Okay, let's kind of break it down a little bit. So just overall, Ryan, you've spoken about some of the frustration in the organizing prior to the election and probably in the aftermath as well. And you are on the bargaining committee. Yeah. Overall, let's start there broadly. How have the negotiations been going?
Like pulling teeth. Yeah, me going into that with some hope that, I could just start a real good line of communication, right? Like I could just appeal to reason. And what we're met with is a lawyer from a notoriously anti-union firm who does all of the speaking. We are faced with 3 other representatives of our company, none of which really add anything to the conversation unless he has a question. Simple things that we would love to just be able to, the flow of information and to be able to actually go back and forth across the table are usually met with, oh, I guess I'll have to look into that. And we won't hear back until 6 weeks later when the next meeting is, right? And so it's really frustrating to see this wall that I think has been put up by the company to say, hey, this is us just really worried about our self-interests. And we're going to hold on to this as best as we can and give you as little as we can. So yeah, in the 6 months that we've been meeting, we have like 2 or 3 tentative TAs on the contract, and they're very basic, the ones that we have. So it's really been a struggle.
What are some of the main bargaining priorities that you went in there with? Obviously, you're talking about parity in wages. You're talking about better safety conditions. What are some of the specifics of that that you really are pushing for as you continue these negotiations with the company?
Yeah, we based our campaign on 3 kind of pillars, which is safety, equity, and empowerment. Ryan spoke before about difference in wages between employees doing the same job, have been there the same amount of time. The only difference could be gender, could be anything. It's just not unfair. It's not fair. So our contract has a series of articles. In our non-economics, most of our articles regard safety issues that we have in the gym. So a lot of it's just compliance with general federal and state law. There's a lot of things that are not compliant with law. We've had OSHA come in several times for different violations, and it's simply just not an environment where you feel safe as a worker or where customers feel safe. And it's very frustrating that there is no mechanism in America to really have companies comply with different laws. For example, we have the workplace violence prevention law in California, which became law in July of last year of 2024. And in that, employers are supposed to design blueprints with the employees, like a collaborative effort on how to react to active shooters and how to react to different violent scenarios in the workplace. And given our history in 2023 of having issues related to this, it's incredible that we not only don't have a plan, but we have requested a plan many, many times in bargaining, via email, people in person to our HR director. And there's no compliance with that. And there's nothing you can do. So outside of the union contract, what path are you going to pursue? With the contract, we can put that through the grievance and arbitration procedure, get that amended, get anything, reparations back into it, because it's not fair that workers want to simply go to work and not fear for their safety. And they want to comply with the most basic laws that we have, which aren't even that strong in America, for safety protections. And we don't have those. So safety is a big thing. Wages, for sure. Industry-wide, we have a lot of issues with the wages in the climbing community. There's like this history, this beautiful, romantic, like dirtbag history of climbers who are, living off the earth, and they're climbing outside. And in the past, like, they would just work at a gym for 6 months to get enough money for the whole rest of the year. And then they'd go climb and work on their projects, which is beautiful. But no one can build a savings on what is out here at the climbing gyms. We're chasing minimum wage. They're highly skilled positions. Our route setters, have to use power tools at heights of 40 feet. They have to communicate with each other and use all these safety measures. And they design routes every single day that are different on 3 different styles of terrain and they also take in consideration people who might be VI or visually impaired, people who like have different abilities. So there's certifications involved. There's a lot of factors. So to be offering people basically minimum wage, especially in a city like Los Angeles or up in the Bay Area, is also not acceptable for us. It's just not livable. And we do have staff who can't afford housing, and things like that. So that is a huge factor for us. And then the final thing is, as Ryan touched on, some of our most basic asks are like respect, like building communication structures within the company. We ask for a joint labor management committee, which could meet whenever there's large safety issues. We asked to bring back that centralized communication platform that everyone was able to use to get notices on new policies or talk about issues that are affecting all of the gyms. And we built in structure as well for what to do when someone receives warning, when someone gets disciplined or is leading toward discipline. And another big issue in our community is sexual harassment. We work in the fitness industry. We ask for different levels of how are we addressing issues in our gyms like these that are very prolific. And so our biggest issues are not building a new handbook or building like a new code of conduct. It's like we're asking for basic compliance with laws. We're asking for livable wages for folks, and we're asking for basic safety protections, both legally and mentally, and with sexual harassment, and ways to address these issues, because Touchstone does not have an internal structure, an internal path for these problems. And in the past, when people report discrimination or sexual harassment, they can just go unanswered, or the answer is deal with it yourself. And that's not okay. That is not a safe environment for people to be working.
Right. You want to make sure that people stay at their jobs, right? And yeah, these are, basic sort of protocols and structures. The cool thing about a union, for many of our listeners who maybe aren't aware, is that within the collective bargaining agreement that you ultimately agree on, it is a binding document that both sides sign. So, when you ask for these things and they agree to them, instead of this pie in the sky, yeah, we'll get to it, trust us, you now have a binding legal contract that you can point to that says, actually, you said you'd get this to us 6 months ago. We gave you some time. Now we're going to start pulling on this thread so that we can actually bring you to do this thing so that you are compliant, right? Or we'll grieve you. We'll file a grievance. We'll bring in these mediators to say they haven't done their side of the bargain, and we have, right? And so the things that you're asking for, you've touched a little bit, just some clarity for any of our listeners who maybe aren't familiar. When you are negotiating, you're negotiating both non-economic and economic proposals. The non-economic ones fit in the realm of these protocols that you're talking about, these communication structures, safety plans, and things of that nature. And then the economics is going to be obviously your wages, potential benefits, retirement, health insurance, things that you may be, a pension, perhaps, things that deal with the material conditions of the workers who will then be receiving those benefits, right? So, oftentimes during bargaining, you will TA a small piece of that. It means a tentative agreement. It means you've come to an agreement on one provision in your contract, and then you can move on to the next. And sometimes it takes a while, but 6 months is a long time, However, there are folks who have been bargaining for years and years and haven't reached a conclusion. And oftentimes it leads to this frustration that you're talking about, Ryan, where, the assumption is And, maybe this is just me being idealistic, but the assumption is that you would come to the table in what's called good faith, meaning you are willing to work towards a solution. You're willing to make compromises and to have a collaborative sort of conversation that ultimately ends in the, better working conditions for all. Happier workers means more profits oftentimes, right? For whatever reason, oftentimes the company just decides to throw that out the window the second that you start asking for these things, right? So I want to ask, you've kind of laid out a lot of these proposals. Ryan, you've already talked about the frustration, but what has been the sort of response to these demands?
It's been a lot of legal jargon and slowing down the process, really gumming it up. A large contention right now. It's something that we've had to call out, and we might be filing an unfair labor practice for this, as well as we're arguing that they're not in good faith for the fact that we have not received counter proposals on our economic proposals yet, ever.
When did you introduce them? When was the first time that you introduced them?
Those a couple months ago.
Okay, so they should have something
November.
by now.
Yeah. We had a change in our healthcare that was presented to us with very limited notice. That then we had to see if we could bargain, which in itself is an unfair labor practice because they're changing conditions on us. And we very quickly were like, okay, we need to talk about this because this is affecting our bottom line. We're met with a response of, well, if you would like to keep your same health insurance, maybe you'll all just take a pay cut. And you can imagine when that was at the table, our reaction and how much that hurt to hear. Since then, there has been just a real slowness on the non-economics. They're feeling like they're just doing the bare minimum. And their argument, which is truly just holding that bargaining chip against us, saying, hey, we want to see more movement on the non-economics before we even talk to you about economics. Their justification saying maybe we don't know what you're really going to be, wanting to hold on to. But that's trying to take all the power for themselves to say, we want to see you sacrifice more and to know what you're willing to give when we should be bargaining the entire agreement, when everything should be open to discussion. So right. It's been frustrating as always to just receive lots of words and have to comb through them and say, oh, okay, what do they even mean by this?
Right.
And it's like, homies, they asked for our economic proposals. We delivered them. And then they were like, actually, we're not going to look at them. Or like, oh, are you sure? Because we're bargaining health insurance. They're like, yeah, I don't think it's appropriate at this time. We'll come back to it. And it's been 4 months. And we're like, you asked for it. So we delivered. You got to respond. I mean, it's a long time.
Yeah. So it feels like it's just completely fallen off the rails a little bit. You're not really getting the movement, even the conversation towards the movement that you've been hoping for. And I can see how that would be an extremely frustrating experience. When's your next bargaining session? When are you supposed to meet next?
Yeah, we have the next one in about 2 weeks, March 10th.
What's next? Just keep doing it, keep doing the deal and see if you can make it work. I mean, I know that there have been, you've been pretty open about the frustrations with the negotiations on your social media and your town halls that you do and really just kind of trying to gather more support from the community to really put some pressure on management to come back to the table in good faith and to really kind of come to a solution, because no one wants to be bargaining a contract for 6 months, for a year, for however long, right? You just want it done. You want to be able to sign the thing and get back to work, right? Some gym goers have put together requests for a boycott of the gym, calling for people to cancel memberships and to, send in letters of support. I've seen action networks that were put together in the last couple of months for this. One big question I do want to ask, especially about something as important as, calling for a boycott, has the union itself called for a boycott as these negotiations have continued? And if not, what can supporters do to support the union and their negotiations and to continue that sort of pressure for management to do the bare minimum, the right thing, right? Instead of canceling their membership? What are some thoughts that you have?
Yeah. So regarding the boycott, we as the union did not call the boycott. We don't sanction the boycott. We appreciate the intention of the people who are calling for it, and it is a very powerful move for customers to make. For the union, we mostly just reserve our power to call a strike, right? So a boycott is when customers choose not to patronize a business, and a strike is when workers will not be working, and they ask customers also do not come to the business. But we saw on social media there's been some interchange of the terms, so we just want to be a little bit clear there. And we found first of all, the support from the community, as always, is incredible. And for people who are thinking of organizing, I think one of the most powerful tools that we have is communication, because Touchstone is not great at communicating, either consistently or clearly or responding in general to messages. So for us, it was very important in our campaign to always have a weekly update. Every Wednesday, we send an email to every employee in the unit with what's going on, even if nothing big is going on that week. And then, of course, we have our social media. So if customers or members or community members want to support, we have a couple ways. At our gym front desks right now, we have what are called union support cards. They look like a belay card for your harness, but they have a little pledge that you are amazing, first of all. And second, you support the union and you support the workers. So get a little ego boost and a little color and add it to your harness. Two, we also have car signs. So these signs say, I support unionized gym workers, or I demand better pay and benefits for Touchstone workers. You can leave them in your car around town, in the parking lots. We've seen them in the wild, which is really cool the last couple of weeks here in LA. And we also have a rally coming up. I don't know when this episode is going to be released, but we have a rally coming up on March 7th in Culver City at 6 p.m. It'll be outside of our gym location, Cliffs of Id, along the street. But it's going to be a huge party. We're going to have music. Other unions are coming in. They're bringing their sound trucks. It's going to be a delight. It's only going to be for an hour. If you're a worker, as we sent in our email, do not walk off the job. We are not closing the gym down. If you're on break, come on out and join us. It'll be a great time. And we also have union pins people can wear. You can put it on your chalk bag, put it on your gear, also wear it on your shirt. And we have union t-shirts. So we only have a little bit of those left, but we are partnering with a local climbing brand that people love. I don't want to announce it yet, but let me just say people love this brand. And they're designing our next round of shirts, which will be available not only for our staff, but will also be available to the public.
This episode is going to be out on March 12th. So when you have your rally, grab some video. Send me some links. We'll put some links in the description. We'll put some photos up of the rally to see how much of a party it was so that folks can kind of see that. We've got a couple of minutes left here. Ryan, I want to start with you. To the folks that are thinking of organizing in any capacity their shop, whether with attaching themselves to a large union like the Teamsters, for example, or doing it themselves, what words of advice, support, solidarity would you start with? What would you tell them if they were in your email inbox today?
Consider your most basic needs and your coworkers. This is clearly what we need for ourselves, but what we believe our community needs, what our friends and coworkers need. So considering them, we I think are very good at checking in and working as a team. But to be organized in such a way means really understanding, I don't need the same thing that they need. I'm part-time, they're full-time, but, have these conversations, right? Understand if that's going to be that necessary step for you guys, what it means, ask other unions, understand the process, because it can be scary. There was a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of saying are we going to be paying dues before we even have a contract? No, that could be something that could be, thrown at you and made you worried. You can wonder if it's all going to be worth it. And then just be patient. Nothing that great is that easy.
Do you think it's worth it, Ryan?
I think so. I mean, again, the evidence of how much we've struggled against this makes me feel like the fight it has really become worth it. And to have the support of everybody, to just I just want this community to be the best it can be. When I moved out to LA, like I knew right away I was going to climb at Touchstone. It had the name, and the relationships I formed with some of the employees was what got me in as an employee myself. And so it's always had this, I've had this relationship with the company, and I want the best for it, and I'll continue to want that and have to fight for it.
What about you, Jess? What would you say to someone? I know you've already talked about folks coming into the DMs and asking about how to organize, but to anyone who's looking to organize, what are some thoughts that you have that you would like to share?
Yeah, I want to echo what you said earlier, actually, Mel, is that when you're organizing for the company, it's not about money, it's about power. People do not want to see the power be taken away from them. And you, as the worker, you have the power. You keep the company going every day. You are on the floor. You're facing the customers. If you and your coworkers chose not to work, to slow down work, to not comply with different policies, you truly have the power. The people who are giving you not orders, but like directions and new policies, they don't know how to do your job. They can't do it like you. So be brave. It's scary, but you as a group have power. And there's like an image on social media that I love of like a big fish chasing a school of fish. But when the school of fish turn around together, they chase off that big fish, kind of like Finding Nemo when they all get out of the net. Okay, so swim together, just keep swimming. Don't come for me, Pixar. And that is the message I want to leave.
Yeah, I mean, I want to reiterate that for my listeners. Folks have been listening to me on this podcast and other podcasts for many a year talking about union organizing specifically. But, really what it comes down to really is just you collectively have power. And also you are an expert in your own workplace, right? These CEOs sitting in their nice houses up in San Francisco or wherever the hell they're sitting, right? With their very deep velvet lined pockets are not standing there on the shop floor with you. They don't necessarily know what's going on. You do. You are an expert at your job. You've spent many, many years building skills. It doesn't matter where you work. If you're working in a call center, if you're working at a climbing gym, if you're working as a barista, if you're in the steel manufacturing business, it doesn't matter, right? Any time that you've put into this vocation, this work experience, this wage labor that we spend so much of our time doing, eventually you become an expert in it, right? And so you know what you need and you know what will make the job better, right? And, final thought for me before I let you folks go and let you have the rest of your night is really just do it anyways, even if you're freaked out. As my mom likes to say, walk through the fear and see what happens on the other side. Because oftentimes what you'll end up with is a better place to work, right? And a sense of security and a sense of belonging, right? And, I will tell you, and anyone who has experienced it will tell you that feeling true solidarity for the first time is better than anything that you could possibly imagine. And we're living through some really harsh times right now. So if you can build that solidarity with yourself in the workplace, with your friends that you spend so much time trauma bonding over behind a bar or a desk or wherever you are, right? And you can also, kick management in the pants a little bit. I think it's probably worth it. So, Jess, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for giving us really an interesting sort of look into this independent union organizing that you are doing, and Godspeed with your negotiations. Hopefully this is one of the things that'll help kick management in the pants to just get moving. And you are welcome back on the show anytime to talk about updates, to talk about events that you're doing. And yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Mel. We appreciate the platform.
Thank you. So good to meet you. Come climb. We will catch you.
Yes. Welcome to the cult, as I always tell our members.
One thing to note before we end our episode for the day. After we finished recording, Ryan and Jess let me know that multiple members of their bargaining unit were deeply impacted by the Eaton fire in Altadena this past January. If you'd like to support them, I have shared GoFundMe links in the description for those members. That's it for us here at Working People. We'll see you back here next week for another episode. And if you can't wait that long, then go explore all the great work we're doing at the Real News Network, where we do grassroots journalism, lifting up the voices and stories from the front lines of struggle. Sign up for the Real News newsletter so you never miss a story, and help us do more work like this by going to therealnews.com/donate and becoming a supporter today. It really makes a difference. I'm Mel Buer, and thanks so much for sticking around. We'll see you next time.
When my face